Welcome to Basel, Switzerland and AMEE 2018, an exciting meeting that's begun, and the first plenary speaker knocked it out of the park. For those of you that have no idea about baseball, that's a good thing, not a bad thing. I'm Lawrence Sherman, and I'm sitting here with my good friend Bertalan Meskó. He's Hungarian, but he will speak English for the benefit of all of us. So, Bersi, you did a fantastic job in your preparation and delivery of that plenary today.
Thank you so much.
Let's talk a little bit about the overall theme. So why should science fiction play a role in medical education?
Science fiction is about hope, that one day things can get much better. And when you are immersed in the daily routine and the tasks you have to fulfill every day, it's easy to forget about the amazing things that might come next. So by just reading or watching science fiction regularly, you keep yourself pushing out yourself of the comfort zone. And it would mean that you would ask yourself the question, what if? What if this technology could be the solution for my problems? Or what if that technology could help me prepare students better? What if the other technology would go berserk and create a dystopic future? And by asking ourselves the what if questions that come from science fiction, I think we can gradually prepare ourselves for whatever is coming next.
So I really love that. So it sort of speaks to why we need to think about the humanities in addition to the science. Because we were talking about the art of medicine, the science of medicine, but there's other parts to the world, and I think you're tying that all together.
Thank you so much for saying that, because that's the core component of everything I represent in digital health. When fantasy movies and superhero movies depict amazing technologies, they never talk about the human part of it. And what I love about science fiction is that it is focusing on the intersection between how we people would feel about new innovation, new things, new technologies, and how those technologies could become real in our lives. And I think that's what we have to understand, that's why science fiction is relevant to medical education, because in medical education we have to help them create an intersection between wisdom, knowledge, experience of 2,000 years since Hippocrates, and new visions and working with patients and technologies, and how we people can work with other people, how we can provide empathy, how we can provide the human touch. And that's the most complicated challenge, to do both while not focusing on either of them, but combining both the technological component and the human one into one amazing creative profession.
So that's really interesting. Let's think a little bit now about where we're missing the mark in medical education.
I think I'm not talking about every lecturer out there, just talking about me as a lecturer. What I feel like I have to be in a box with the sets of tools and skills and knowledge I was given, and I have to transmit that box to the students. Why none of them thinks about boxes anymore. And therefore, I'm very interested in keeping traditional values that I've been getting from my peers and professors to transmit those to my students. I'm very interested in that, but I don't care about the methods I use. So if it's about this year, if it's about a Facebook challenge I create for them, because there I can keep them engaged to, even when they just check Facebook, I make them think about the ethical issues we cover in my lectures, I win. But if next year it's about Instagram or a perfectly offline seminar like, I don't care about that. I care about the values and the knowledge, not about the methods. We have to be very open-minded about the methods now.
It's really interesting. In continuing education, we think about that because we're continually assessing, right? So what are the needs of the practicing healthcare community? You're thinking about the folks at the beginning of their education. So I think it's really tying that together, and it's being, the word we use is relevant. If you're not relevant, you're not hitting what you need to hit.
Exactly.
So along those lines, we met 10 years ago. How have things changed in technology and social media since we first met?
Wow. I've been having the same motto as a lecturer. If you want to teach me, you first have to reach me. 10 years ago, everything happened offline, and when I introduced the concept of social media to students, many of them were surprised that it could be used for something meaningful and useful. 5 years ago, social media is quite common ground, but when I started talking about a few basic technologies like virtual reality or things like that, they were very surprised that those things are not just for gaming and entertainment, but can be used for medical purposes. Now, But for them, all of them, social media is of course common ground. All of them live online more than I do. VR, augmented reality, they all know about this stuff, they are up to date. And of course they've heard about artificial intelligence. When I ask them questions about in what elements or aspects in a physician's life could artificial intelligence replace you, that's the part where they start becoming more interested in that. So as you see, based on this progress, we have to be able to ask them different questions 5 years from now, but for this we have to progress at least as fast as they can.
So the content is different, but the students are different. So how have you adapted? How have you grown digitally since you started teaching until now?
I was a very basic social media user. I was on channels, sharing stuff, replying to stuff. Now I'm more of I try to be a guide because I spend most of my time dedicated to reading studies, learning about new skills, elements of technology and all these. So my own use of the internet is different. But what I experienced in the last 10 years was that first when they started challenging me back about digital stuff, I felt offended because I was trained to know more than anyone else, and I felt that that's my obligation, but of course that was not the case. So when I started to learn how to juggle with 3 balls, there was a snap in my mind. Once I remember the second when I learned how to juggle. There was 1 second something changed in my mind, neurologically, and I started to understand, oh, you have to let these things go and it will work. I remember the first time when I did this with students that, okay, I'm not offended, you know something digitally better than I do, let's learn something from that. And now my experience is I'm like a student. I have a guide and I have some insights to share, I have an agenda, but I'm a student like them.
Well, it's interesting. One of the themes of Professor Hardin's book that's coming out is how the role of the medical teacher has changed. And he uses that word a lot, guide, right? So it used to be what you said, we'll tell you what to do. Now it is, we're going to guide you and teach you how to find the answers. So I think it's along the lines of what you're saying.
It sounds wonderful. It sounds like we used to be like lecturers, we used to be books for students, and now we are online courses that evolve as we are talking about that. So it might be frightening for some people out there that to be able to prepare those students for the future, you have to be the most progressive, the most open-minded, the most creative. But when you find out that it doesn't have to come out of like an intrinsic motivation from within you, but because you are in there with your students on the same level, equal level partnership, and you get the motivation from them, it becomes a so enjoyable process that you become like a kid who are ready to learn again. And then, of course, with your skills and experience and knowledge, return that knowledge back to the students.
Well, see, that's nice. We talk about lifelong learning, but I think we sometimes forget the source of the learning can be the student rather than another faculty member.
Because what can they bring to the table? Like, what patients can bring to the table? Why should we ask them how to design a facility for them? Of course we should. We are doing those things for them. So I can't leave them out. I have to involve them, not just by asking them to answer a few questions about the future. I want to involve them in the decision making about my course. So when I launched the curriculum that the medical board approved at the university, still, after the second or third lecture, I send them out a survey and they can let me know what topics they would love to cover more. So I have to change these things in between during the curriculum, otherwise I would lose them already, even though we just started.
So as educators, we hear you saying that and we're thinking formative assessment. So you've already hit 2 parts of the educational assessment continuum. You've got needs assessment, so you're assessing what their needs are and your content is based on that. And then formative assessment. As you're teaching, is the content hitting what it's supposed to hit? And if not, are we making the changes to make it happen?
It's amazing.
So you're an educator, Bersi, so you fit right into this group. You should come back next year.
It sounds wonderful. Before I used to feel like I'm pressured to do some things in a way that I was taught to do, because I'm my lecturer and I'm supposed to do this and that thing. I think I'm a gamer. I know when I play a game, I can learn without limitations. So why would I not use the same method I use for myself while lecturing other people? I'm playing with them and I make them give me puzzles so I can get better, so I can get better for them.
But you define 2.0. 2.0 is pushing out and pulling back. you're doing just that. That's why the old way was 1.0. It was, I'll tell you, you'll listen to me.
I learned from a performance psychologist that when we talk about the old ways, even though that's not useful anymore, we shouldn't say that was bad. No, that time that was the best method available, and we have to respect and value that. But now I think that method doesn't work anymore, because we lecturers don't compete with each other. We compete with YouTube channels and online courses for free, like what the Finnish government gave out, a course about artificial intelligence, brilliant. It takes you 1 or 2 days to go through that, but you learn every basic thing about AI, so you compete with those. And if you're not ready to get new things into your system every semester, every week, even every week, then you might fall behind.
By the way, I learned about that Finnish course from you.
Oh, I'm so happy.
I told you, I learned from you, which makes me happy. Let's turn back to the presentation for a moment. So you really pushed the idea of curiosity, and questions from the audience and from the online community came up about curiosity. So how do you encourage curiosity in students?
I was very surprised by most of the questions focusing on curiosity. It was like being curious is a big skill. It's something extraordinary. It's not. That's what pushes the boundaries of science further and further away. Pure basic curiosity. So what I do is I tell my students how I become curious, gradually, by reading and watching science fiction, by pushing myself out of my comfort zone, by doing new courses I've never done before, and even that might not even be relevant to my own field of interest, but I think that would give me new skills or new approaches, new visions. So by doing that and showing them this in practice, I feel like I'm doing the same for them. But the absolute basic point is reading and watching science fiction. That will challenge you.
See, I love that, because it tells us that what if, which was your theme today. What if? Imagine, if you will, right? The Rod Serling thought. And to me, you combine the what if with the why, and you have it.
That's the jackpot.
Right, it really is.
But we've lost that feeling of, we've lost the urge to ask the what if question, because we have this, and I'm given these tools and I have to use this or that. I don't care. I wouldn't feel myself at my top form if I couldn't use that or this, and I could get those technologies or methods to my own practice by asking myself the what if question. I can't, be content with less than that.
Sometimes, though, we individually say what if, but in our system, we can't change.
That's true.
Now, you can't answer how to change a system, but what you can do is encourage people to encourage change.
To at least try, and I hope I can help them by saying that if you try, they will think you are crazy, because every great method, approach, technology that became amazing today used to be science fiction-like or unrealistic or out of this world. So if they think you are crazy, that should be more than enough. It means you're on the right track, and it's about trying. No, in an ideal way, governments would bring down 3D printers to medical practices, so traumatologists could create customized casts. It won't happen, but traumatologists can bring those 3D printers down and create new kind of approaches for their practices. So while I believe in from the top to the bottom approach, that of course with good policies that's going to happen, I also believe in my own power as an individual who reads and watches science fiction, that I will constantly ask the question, what if? And if I see something that could be done, because that's technologically possible, I will find a way.
Well, what if we had more time to talk? We don't. Why? Because we're time limited. But I want to thank you. This was a great conversation. I always enjoy connecting with you. We don't always get to see each other, but I enjoy having these conversations, and I think you did a great job today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bertalan, thank you for being with us today.